doing, everybody? This is Splash of Gas with Dave Weichert, the NASCAR podcast. We are officially in Snowball Derby week. The best late model drivers in the country converge annually on Five Flags Speedway in Pensacola, Florida. So excited for the 300 laps set for Sunday afternoon. Big names in NASCAR and short track racing: Kyle Busch, Majeski, Kaden Honeycutt, Cole Butcher, Stephen Nasse, Derek Thorn, Bubba Pollard, Noah Gragson, plus many others will be ready to rumble it out on the short track. There are also big names: Luke Baldwin, Stephen Nasse, plus others entered in the pro late model Snowflake 125. Yes, it used to be the Snowflake 100 for years. They're upping it 25 laps for the Snowflake 125 this upcoming Saturday. Splash of Gas will bring you all the pre-race coverage leading up to the qualifying and races. We take a gander at the drivers to look out for the Snowball Derby and the Snowflake 125. Exclusive Splash of Gas interviews with Derek Thorn and Tristen McKee as they each prepare for the Derby. Discussions with Dave, history time, paint scheme of the week, Fast Davies bets, predictions for the Snowball Derby, and so much more on this episode of Splash of Gas. As always, we're sponsored by Magical Travel with Dave, aka Disney Dave Weichert, my father. He will be able to help you with all your Disney and Universal vacation needs. He can be reached at DisneyDaveW@Verizon.net. Please make sure you follow all the Splash of Gas social medias for midweek and on-track updates. Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube are all Splash of Gas with Dave Weichert. Now for trivia question time. This episode's question: who was the first driver to win back-to-back Snowball Derbies? Answer coming at the end. Let's get right into it with discussions with Dave. Early Derby Week news. 2025 Snowball Derby winner Kaden Honeycutt, his team Jet Motorsports, announced they were not having a good start to their Derby week as they had to load up and head out after blowing a motor. They will have to swap motors for the Derby. What effect will that have on them? Or any, as Honeycutt looks to go back-to-back at the Snowball Derby. One name from the NASCAR circuit, from the Cup Series specifically, that is coming down to Pensacola for the Derby is Ryan Preece. If you know short track racing, typically Preece is a modified guy in the Northeast. Saw him at New Smyrna at the beginning of this year running his modified. Last week, Preece came on the Dale Jr. download live from his shop, which is on his own property. Really cool. It showed his late model in the background, number 60, just like his Cup car. And I believe one of his partners this weekend through Kroger, his main sponsor on the Cup Series, is Oscar Mayer, the hot dog company. He has a hot dog mobile on his car, and Preece's paint scheme, the theme of it, is space themed. There's multiple Saturn rings around the 60 with Apollo in between the gap on the 6. Very cool. I believe Preece is poking fun at his Daytona 500 crash where his car really went upwards practically like a rocket at Cape Canaveral. Preece then changed his social media's profile picture to a photoshopped version of him as in an astronaut suit. Very cool nonetheless. Wanted to touch upon that. Hope for a great weekend for Ryan and no crashes this time. But nonetheless, wanted to touch upon both of those minor stories leading into Snowball Derby, specifically the engine blowing on the 21. Move into the next topic. And when I was originally writing this episode, this next topic we're talking about wasn't even going through my head. We are right now consumed by the ongoing lawsuit Front Row Motorsports 2311 Racing versus NASCAR. They're wrapping up today. It's announced that Chris Gabehart is leaving Joe Gibbs Racing. Denny Hamlin didn't even have a comment. On Wednesday, Jenna Fryer from the Associated Press confirmed Chris Gabehart has officially parted ways with Joe Gibbs Racing. Gabehart amassed an impressive resume with his years being Denny Hamlin's crew chief from 2019 to 2024. 22 wins, back-to-back Daytona 500s in 2019 and 2020 under Gabehart, and where Denny never finished worse than 8th in the final Cup standings. This past season, Gabehart transitioned into the role of Director of Competition for Joe Gibbs Racing, a move that, at the time, surprised Denny. Chris Gale, this past year, steps up into Denny's crew chief role, and the two, as we just watched, almost won a championship, finishing runner-up to Kyle Larson. Gabehart has not spoken to the media. As mentioned, Denny hasn't, and Joe Gibbs Racing hasn't said anything at all. This, I believe by the way it sits, just like we see it, very unexpected. Not sure what transpired between both parties. And from the outside looking in, the relationship that Gabehart looked to have developed with Ty Gibbs through his time in the Xfinity Series truly marks a shift in Joe Gibbs Racing. How will Gabehart leaving, the ripples of that in JGR, how will that affect next year? We will see. Now, for more ongoing news from the lawsuit, Bob Jenkins, the owner of Front Row Motorsports, gave his testimony. The statistics in it are pretty shocking. Front Row Motorsports loses $6.8 million per NASCAR Cup Series year. He has never made a profit, nor has even taken a salary from Front Row Motorsports. Front Row in 2025 had 9 unsponsored races this year, where Jenkins put his own companies on the car, so he didn't have a blank car. Pre-Next Gen, Jenkins and Front Row spent $1.8 million per year on parts. Next Gen, they spend $4.7 million a year on parts. Currently, it costs $30,000 to repair a non-wrecked race car each week because NASCAR says the nose and tail must be sent back regardless to the vendor, and teams cannot repair it themselves. Minute details that this lawsuit is bringing out. When each side is saying their arguments, of course it's going to be pointed in a certain direction. And think Judge Bell, the comments that he said was trying to avoid that tone. But if you look at the stats that Jenkins just went over, I mean, it's really head-scratching. I mean, NASCAR is supposed to be a blue-collar, hard-working sport, and they seem to be pocketing a good amount of money from the teams. Yes, that's one of the main arguments in this lawsuit. And of course, Jenkins is going to supply evidence to support that case. Say what you want about the parts increases, and yes, that's a big issue. The smaller teams bigger teams too, should not have to pay so much more for the specific parts. If there's a better, cheaper option, why can't you use that on a race car? Isn't that the whole engineering and kind of the garage car building, engine building aspect that the sport grew up on? I sure believe so. The biggest issue as a race fan that Jenkins brings up is the deal with the front and the back of the cars. Why can't the teams prepare them? Why can't they make adjustments to them? NASCAR can go and say, oh, the aerodynamics, so there's a more even playing field. And yes, we have, in the history of NASCAR, we have seen teams try to bend a little bit more and be more aerodynamic. Heck, we saw it last year with Joey Logano and the Webb glove. Teams will try everything. But this extra added cost, I don't see the benefit of it by NASCAR to do this specifically. I'm sure that NASCAR and engineers and motorsports engineers can prove me wrong and give arguments to support this. The farther we go on with this lawsuit, and now all the court hearings, it does seem like eventually at some point, NASCAR is going to have to make adjustments or get a better agreement with the teams. I think there's going to be some changes that are just necessities to the teams that need to be changed. I don't know if I'm completely out of left field with saying this, but I think one of the changes should be the stuff with the parts, making it more affordable for single car teams, for newer teams to get into the sport. We will see. Still so much to unplay in and out of court for this specific issue. Moving right along to our next topic on discussions with Dave, Corey Heim's plans for 2026. More is known, but still unknown. Was released this week, and just like we've pretty much known, Corey Heim is not going to be back in the truck series in 2026, at least full time. Maybe he'll come back here and there, but now that doesn't really look like that's going to happen. Tricon Garage posted a thank you to Corey Heim. Truly unforgettable run with you. Now does officially look like Corey Heim's time in the truck series has come to an end. He's the champion. It's time to move on. It does not look like Corey Heim is going to be full-time in any of the three series in 2026. We do know Heim in 2026 is going to make several starts at the Cup level, just like he did in 2025. It doesn't sound like that's going to be full-time right now with 2311, but what number of Cup races is Heim going to be in next year? We saw him collect the top 5 in a limited amount of starts. It's unfortunate with Heim being Team Toyota for so long that the relationship he has with Joe Gibbs, as we know, who kind of is the big player in the Toyota NASCAR relationship, that Heim isn't full-time in 2026. We are right now in the first week of December. Truly thought the Truck Series champs' plans would have been figured out by now. We'll keep our ear to the ground on that one. And that wraps up this episode's edition of Discussions with Dave. As mentioned in the intro, this week was thankful enough to have 2 drivers that are going to be in the Snowball Derby this upcoming weekend, and one of them was 2022 Snowball Derby champ Derek Thorn. Greatly appreciated Derek's time. Here's what Derek had to say. Next driver we bring onto the show is already down in Pensacola, getting ready for the Snowball Derby. A super late model legend, 2022 Snowball Derby champion, Derek Thorn. Thank you for joining the show again, Derek.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Last spoke to you after a long night in New Smyrna for the Clyde Hart Memorial. You wrapped up the 2025 ASA All-Star season with a strong third-place run. You started 8th. How would you say your day went at the All-American 400 in Nashville Fairgrounds a few weeks ago?
It was a welcome event for us because Nashville is one of my favorite places, and the ASA season for us had its fair share of ups and downs for sure. And I think there was a good way to end on a positive note. We started 7th or 8th, had good speed all day, played a tire strategy deal, made some good solid changes there in the Highlands Motorsports number 96, and we were able to climb our way up into the top 5 late in the race. And then, by the time the dust had settled, we had got our way up to 3rd by the time the checkered flag flew. But it was nice to finally have the car. We had a car that was solid all day. We had little bit of luck go our way. As for most of the season, I feel like the luck had not been on our side. So to end the season on a positive note for the point season was a nice change of pace for us. And leading into the Snowball Derby, the biggest race of the year, it was good momentum for us as a team to head that direction.
Appreciate you touching on that. Just as you mentioned, the ASA season has, ups and downs. After 12 races, you collect 10 top 15s, including a P2 run at Dominion and a P3 in Nashville, as just mentioned. Once the 2025 smoke would clear, you walk out 7th in the standings. How would you summarize your 2025 season?
Well, we were as low as like 13th at one time, so 7th was a welcome thing. But I'd say summing it up is just racing is a lot of ups and downs and luck and stuff like that. And it just was one of those years where I feel like I had in 10 previous years of me running in California and for different teams. So we had 10 years of bad luck in one season, which is the most random thing. So to navigate that gets tough for everybody, right? From a financial side, from a logistics side, then also from an emotional side as well. So I think we as a team got our fair share of emotional roller coasters to last us a while. But at the end of the day, I think we all love this sport, and to have the support of Appalachian Sucker Punch, El Bandito Yankee Tequila, and all of our amazing partners, to have the ability to run the ASA Stars National Tour in itself is a huge blessing, just because it's so hard logistically to pull off. So the fact that we finished the deal, there was plenty of times we could have thrown in the towel and said, what, we're gonna pick and choose races for the rest of the season. We could have easily done that. So just the perseverance of the team, and to stay with it and then to dig through it. 7th doesn't look like a lot possibly from outside looking in, but from internally, it's a huge accomplishment for us to just not give up, be present. I think we picked up 4 or 5 positions in points the last handful of races, and to have the partnership with Rhett Jones Racing and Port City Race Cars. We started racing with them midway through the season. So that in itself was a huge uplift for us also as a team, and it just kind of helped get the ball rolling for what we want to do for the future.
Gotcha. Appreciate touching upon that. It shows a lot of experience from your team. Besides getting the bad luck out, anything you felt like you improved? Sounds like you brought on those Rhett Jones cars. Anything that you can build on for next week?
It is. The Port City race cars and Rhett Jones Racing, like Port City is really built off of a team dynamic, which was it's a good thing when we're racing in the ASA Stars National Tour, because we're going to tracks, a lot of them for me, for the first time. And, as a single team or a solo team, which is what we were the first half of the season, when you're having a challenging week, it becomes extremely nice to have a team that you can lean on, or a teammate to lean on, or another team to where you can go to them and say, hey, what's working or not working for you? And you can meet in the middle, right? You're accomplishing 2 or 3 times the work that you would be on your own. So to go into a lot of these racetracks and have, we have teammates like Cole Raz and Kyle Steckley and Casey Roderick, and these are all very established, awesome drivers behind the wheel, and to have Gary Crooks and Mark Rett and then Josh Reeves on the 96 and Jeff Foltz. Like, these are all big names in racing that have accomplished a lot. So it just helps you as a group to tackle a common problem versus going at it alone. So it's been a reassuring thing to have that whole group to go about these races and try to make the most of each event.
Cool. A lot of experience with that group, as you just mentioned. Glad that you can lean on that. Before we get into the current Snowball Derby action, you won in 2022. Before you got there, you had to go through back-to-back second-place finishes in 2020 and 2021. Remember watching both of those years, just how strong your car was both of those days. How were you able to stay focused as a driver to win in 22 after tough endings in the 2 previous years? It seems difficult to do.
Yeah, I think it's just getting to work. That team we had was out of California, owned by Byron Campbell, and Mike Keene had been my crew chief, for 12 or 13 years, part of that program, and we had built something special. Mike Keene and my relationship and Byron Campbell's relationship and what we were doing to come out to the Derby from California was a huge feat in itself. And then to come out here and run as well as we did, and I'd say dominate potentially the first, for 3 or 4 years, we had an extremely fast race car. And, I think it's one of those things where it's just a token, or it's just a sign of, when you have everything clicks, when you have all the right people in place, everything's, it's a well-oiled machine. When we go home after those disappointing events, finishing second on when we could have easily won it, it's obviously tough to swallow, but you just get to work and do what you got to do to be in position, because the Derby itself is one of those events that doesn't owe anybody anything. There's moments where you'll be the highest of highs and the lowest of lows throughout the week that we're here, and you just try to take it one day at a time and know that when you show up, we had an amazing race car that obviously had awesome speed, but when you have these late race restarts, anything can happen, and obviously it did to us. And we just kept coming back and grinding it out, and we had a lot of really great years in the 43.
Awesome. Hard-working team for sure. When you finally won in 22, I mean, what were the feelings that was going through you when you finally lifted the Tom Dawson Trophy?
It's just a sigh of relief. It's like it was a 10-year or 12-year process. So, I mean, the years that we ran well were amazing, but no one sees the grind that happened the 6 or 7 years prior to that. And you come out and you're repetitive and you continue to show up and you try to be part of what is the biggest race for us of the year. And then what we do, it's our Daytona 500. And qualifying day on Friday is the most stressful day of the year per se. So it's just one of those things of just grinding it out and trying to make the most of your week and, ride the roller coaster of emotions, so to speak.
Thank you for going through those details. I really do appreciate that insight. Unfortunately, last year's Derby didn't go your way. As mentioned, you have momentum from the third place at the All-American. How are you? I know you're out there in Pensacola already. I mean, how are you in the car feeling for this weekend and, of course, Sunday?
That's good. I think our Port City car has been pretty solid. We made some big swings out the last couple of days just to kind of learn as much as we possibly can. So that way when we're to practice on your own is one thing. When you get here and everybody's unloaded and you got 50 cars or 60 cars in one division all trying to take to the track at the same time, you end up running out of time pretty quick. So I think just trying to navigate what works, what doesn't work for us, and then to have, two other teammates in Casey Roderick and Noah Gragson and Buddy Shepard and Cole Raz, like those are all great drivers in their own respect. So we'll sit down today and as a group and reconvene on what worked, what didn't work. And then, if one of the teammates or one of us is struggling in one department, it's easier for us to sit down and say, hey, what did you guys do to fix this problem? And we can get better prepared for the week, because as the week goes on, you're going to have a bunch of great teams and a bunch of great drivers that are going to be really hard to beat. And, and you got to be on your A game. So we just do what we can to elevate ourselves, take it a day at a time, make the best of what we got. And hopefully when the dust settles come, the 300 laps, the Snowball Derby, we're in a good position to run well.
Gotcha. A lot of insight seems to be in those meetings. Pretty neat. As you know, the Derby is, as you just said, a very long race, 300 laps. How do you stay focused and through the long runs, through the short runs? How do you stay focused behind the wheel there?
Just live in the moment. I think it's one of those things that as soon as green flag drops, you really don't know how the cards are going to fall. There's days where you're going to get out front and lead every lap, and it's going to seem pretty easy, right? There's going to be days you're going to be 20 to 25th, scratching and clawing your way through the field to look for track position. So as the green flag falls, I think you just kind of have to roll with the punches and adjust based off of whatever's occurring with you at that moment. And, try to position yourself strategically to either gain track position or maintain track position. And it's one of those things where you try to give feedback to the crew to give them as much time as possible to think about what changes to make with what you're fighting with the race car, the balance of the race car. And then, every set of tires you bolt on, even with a perfect race car, changes the balance subtly one way or the other. So a little bit of luck involved, obviously a little bit of planning, good communication, obviously, in anything is good. But it's just part of the process of us communicating the best we can and just making the best adjustments we can based off the circumstances at hand.
Got it. Seems like you and your team will be ready to execute for sure throughout the weekend. As an East Coast guy, I really do need to get to the Derby myself one of these years. I've only watched it on TV. Don't want you to give any secrets, but any bumps, cracks, or lines that you're feeling or looking for on track? And how would you describe racing at Five Flags?
Five Flags is so unique. We could bring our package from Nashville and unload here, and it's quite a bit different in handling. And it's just such a unique place. There's nothing we can do. Myself, coming from the West Coast and even being at a lot of the tracks on the East Coast, there's really no place that compares to it. And when you unload, it takes repetition. It takes a familiarity with the place itself. But, I've become accustomed to getting as close to the wall in turn one as possible. But what people don't see is there's a crack down there that I try to put my left front in. So the wall is nice, but the characteristics that are next to it are what I'm looking for. And then there's just such a unique way to drive the place that repetition is such a big thing. All these young drivers will ask me, what does it take to run well at Pensacola? And I'm like, just seat time. It takes just years of coming here, years of repetition, years of getting comfortable. And the track itself is just such a unique place that it's hard to prepare for unless you just come here and experience it for yourself.
Thank you for those small details. Really do appreciate that insight. Last question, as always, and yourself included, big names throughout racing entered in the Snowball Derby. There are, of course, crown jewel events throughout the ASA, All-Star season schedule. What makes the Snowball Derby special for you, and any nerves expected throughout the weekend?
It is. This is definitely the biggest emotional roller coaster week of the year in racing, without a doubt. Maybe tenfold over what you usually experience at a race, just because of what's on the line or what's at stake. Right when you strap in on Friday to qualify, it sits in your hands to make the show. Of what would be a 20-car B main that you don't want to be in. So it's your job as a driver to execute, perform, and do what you can. To make that part of it goes smooth, but just the pressure and anxiety of the Derby itself. It's such a huge event. 15, 20 years ago, always watched it, always wished I could be there. Fast forward 20 years, I've been able to come here maybe 10, 11 times, and just been super fortunate to have the opportunity to come here. Not only have the opportunity to come and compete and experience it, but then also have the opportunity to come and compete and race for wins, right? Which in itself is a huge feat. So just feel super fortunate and blessed to even have the opportunity to come out here and compete at this, because it's just an event that most short track racers in the country want to come be at. And just to have the opportunity to come compete an experience, or I guess a blessing in itself.
Definitely the place to be at. Really appreciate all the detail, and then touching upon all that, Derek. Best of luck this weekend. We'll be watching on TV, and we'll talk to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for having me on, and you have a good week.
Yep, you too. Have a good one, man.
You too.
Uberly cool to get the chance to talk to Derek, listening to all the fine details that go into the Snowball Derby was truly fascinating. Now for Paint Scheme of the Week. We were just talking about Keelan Harvick, the 62, the Hunt Brothers pizza scheme that was in the South Carolina 400. Well, typically don't like to do repeats, but the young Harvick's Christmas Santa paint scheme theme for the Snowflake 125 is awesome. Big red 62, snowman, elves, Santa waving a checkered flag. Just great for the season. Check Keelan's ride out and the rest of the pro late models in the Snowflake 125 on Saturday night. Now for Snowball Derby History Time. In the closing laps of the 2019 Snowball Derby, Travis Braden's night turned into one of the wildest roller coasters in racing history. After contending up front, Braden was spun and dropped to the back, only to dodge a massive restart pileup a few laps later. Braden regrouped, moved forward, and managed to pass Jake Garcia to take the checkered flag in the P2 position. The drama didn't end there. Post-race inspection found a brake system violation on the winner, Stephen Nasse, handing the Tom Dawson Trophy to Braden, cementing one of the most improbable victories the Derby has ever seen for the West Virginia native, Travis Braden. Next story, Bickle's Hood. Stories about Rich Bickle's Snowball Derby wins have been taken on a life of their own, especially the ones claiming he won without a hood. Multiple drivers, including Bickle himself, were asked, and turns out the legend is true. In both the 96 and 98 derbies, Bickle took the checkered flag, even though he was missing pieces of his car, his hood. Fans and competitors wondered if this was some type of trick, maybe a cheat. But each time Bickle sailed through tech inspection and the victories stood. Nothing illegal was caught. And Bickle is still a two-time Derby champ. Now for our second exclusive Splash of Gas interview with Snowball Derby competitor in 2025, Spire Motorsports development driver Tristen McKee. Here's what Tristen had to say. Next driver we bring on the show made a big splash in 2025, Tristen McKee. I know you're down in Pensacola getting ready for the Derby. Appreciate your time. Thank you for joining, Tristen.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Prior to 2025, 2 seasons before, you win the Cars Pro Late Model race at Dillon. It's announced this past January that you signed a development agreement with Spire. How's it been working with everyone at Spire Motorsports, and what have you learned from some of the other drivers there?
Yeah, it's been great. Just Spire's kind of like my home now. Just everyone there kind of is family to me, and Jeff Dickerson, Bill Anthony, just everyone over there has welcomed me in so well over the past year, maybe a little bit more even. It's just been a really great experience, and I'm super grateful to be able to kind of run the banner for them and just kind of represent them in a good way.
That's great to hear. I'm glad it's going smoothly for you. Before we get into the ARCA and late model action, you win the Trans Am TA2 championship this season, collecting several wins. How was racing in that series, and what did you learn from there?
It's definitely a lot of cool. It's definitely really cool. Kind of getting to learn the road course side of the racing is kind of new to me over the past couple of years. So it definitely feels good to get the championship in my first full season in Trans Am. Last year I ran 2 races, and this year I ran obviously the full season. So it was really cool to first of all be the youngest champion and get the Young Gun Award, Rookie of the Year, kind of a bunch of awards for that. So it definitely means a lot, especially working with all the SLR crew. They did a great job kind of preparing me for all the races and, helping me work throughout the weekend and each and every race, just getting better and better. So it was definitely a learning curve, but it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Appreciate you touching upon that. Seems like that paid off at the beginning of August. You make your ARCA Series debut at Watkins Glen a few days after your 15th birthday. You qualify 4th, a late restart, sees you hold off Taylor Reif and Chris Wright for the win. What did you take away from your first ARCA race, and how, of course, was getting the win?
Yeah, it was really cool kind of to win in my debut, also a couple days after my birthday. I think Todd Gillen has the record for the youngest, but I didn't even have a race within the amount of days that he was able to win it. But it was definitely cool to be able to win it. As soon as I turned 15, and also in the first race that I ran. So that was a really cool experience that I always kind of remember. And definitely there were some things just kind of learning the car throughout that I took away from that race, and then was able to use in some of the other ARCA starts that I have.
Awesome. Appreciate you touching upon that. You were talking those other ARCA starts. You run 3 more ARCA races and collect 2 more top 5s. You've been in different series even at a young age. How do you like the ARCA car, and how's the racing in that series?
Yeah, it's definitely a different thing. Especially some of these short tracks, there's kind of a lot of lap cars, so that's like a whole other race. It's just kind of finding a way to get through the lap cars and kind of managing that. So it's definitely a lot of fun. Bristol was a ton of fun. You're going around the lap cars, going really fast around Bristol. So it's definitely a cool series and kind of a good stepping stone for some of the top 3 series.
For sure. Glad you can see that. Throughout this season, you make 18 starts on the late model sides of things between the pro, super, and late model, collecting a win on the Cars Pro Late Model Tour. Big fan of short track late model racing myself. How's been racing the late models this year, and what have you learned?
Yeah, it's been cool. I've been racing late models for the past 4 or 5 years, so not a lot new there, but definitely was able to kind of race with some, in the late model stock series, which I hadn't been doing a ton of that. I've been doing a bunch of the pro late model and straight rail stuff, so it's definitely cool to, we raced with Matt Piercy in the late model stock, so that was a lot of fun, and I went to a lot of cool tracks with the stock series and just had a lot of good moments, so that was definitely a lot of fun this year.
Sounds great. With being up front in so many of these races, you've been in some close counter racing incidents. Some drivers can be more outspoken than others, but as a young driver, how do you move on to the next race after a racing incident? It seems like it can be hard to do.
Yeah, not really. Just kind of got to focus on the next one. And, after every single race is over, I'm already, looking towards the next one no matter what happened. And you're always, preparing for the next one and just seeing what you can do better each and every week. So kind of as soon as the race is over, I'm already thinking about the next one. So definitely just kind of once it's done, you're over with and you're going on to the next one and preparing and seeing what you can do best for that. So definitely not a big deal there.
Got it. Impressive as a young driver. That's great to hear. Now getting into the Snowball Derby action, You're down in Pensacola getting the car ready. Many big NASCAR names entered. How are you feeling for the rest of the week and of course, the weekend? Any nerves?
No, not really. Kind of just gotta wait for this weather here coming in. Hopefully it misses us a little bit and we're able to get it all in here in the next few days. But I'm definitely looking forward to it. These cars are not really much new. I've been running the straight rail stuff, like I said, for the past few years. The super late model only have a couple of those starts, but the pro late model have tons and tons of races in that. So I'm feeling super comfortable. Five Flags is a bit of a new track for me, but I'm definitely looking forward to it, and love running the straight road cars, and super late models are definitely one of the most fun cars I've ever driven, so I'm looking forward to it.
Got it. Always fun to watch for sure. Was talking to Derek Thorn, 2022 Derby champ. He mentioned the pressure of qualifying on Friday. Anything specific you're doing to prepare for that? And I know you just said Five Flags is a newer track for you, but any line bumper cracks that you're looking for on track?
Yeah, everyone, is kind of, we're all up against the wall in turn one, but just main thing is just getting all you can out of the car for qualifying. And definitely, I haven't, been through the Derby Friday night qualifying yet. I've never done it, but definitely seems like it's kind of a high intense kind of deal. So I'm definitely looking forward to having that moment. But it's just all about getting the best lap you can and having a good starting spot.
Got it. Seems like you'll be prepared. As we know, the Derby is a long 300 laps. If qualifying go as planned, how as a driver do you plan to stay focused throughout the long runs, the short runs of 300 laps?
Yeah, hopefully we can have a good starting spot. Our goal is to be somewhere inside the top 10 for the Derby and just kind of, run our race and take care of the car, take care of the tires every 100 laps. So you're putting tires on pretty much every 100 laps. So we kind of break it up into 100-lap races. So I'm definitely just looking to get a good starting spot up towards the front and just kind of take care of our car and go from there.
Awesome. Appreciate you on touching upon the goals for the Derby as well for you. Looking ahead towards next season in 2026, what are your goals for next year, man?
Yeah, obviously I'm going to be racing a lot. Not 100% sure on everything yet, but I'll be doing still a lot of late model stuff. Hopefully as much road course racing as I can, as well as ARCA, and then when I'm old enough, hopefully I'll be able to compete in some truck races, and just super busy next year still, just like this year. So I'll be in the car a lot, getting a lot of seat time, and just obviously the goal is to win as many races as possible. So that'll still be the same goal going into 2026.
Sounds great. Can't wait for that for you. Do like to ask this question to young drivers. You mentioned the big racing schedule next year. A full racing schedule plus school. How do you manage everything?
Yeah, it's definitely tough. Just kind of managing it all when you're going for multiple days at a time. We're kind of at a racetrack for 4 or 5 days, and you're home for a day or two, and then you're going again. So I do online school, so it's definitely a tough thing to manage. But just got to find times to work it in. Sometimes we're at the track or try to get ahead when I'm at home. So it's definitely a tough balance there, but you got to get it done.
10-4. Appreciate you touching upon that. And last question: favorite off-track hobby?
Probably golfing.
Heck yeah. Always nice to get out on the links for sure. Well, really appreciate your time, Tristen, and congratulations on such a big 2025 so far, and best of luck this weekend, all right?
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yep, thank you. Have a good one.
You too.
See ya.
Great to talk to Tristen. Truly impressed how mature and focused he sounded. Excited to see what Tristen can do in both the Snowflake 125 and then, of course, the Derby. Now, the drivers to look out for the Snowflake 125. As the way things sit currently, there are 62 drivers entered in the Snowflake 125. They will not be able to take all of them, obviously. Some will not make the race. Do have a decent-sized list for both races for drivers to look out for. Just so much top-notch talent in both of these races and throughout the weekend. Here's who I think should be contending for the race, or at least in the front of the pack. Jake Finch, son of James Finch, spoke to Jake at New Smyrna. He runs a part-time ARCA schedule as well. Next guy, another young hot shot, Max Reeves. Think he's going to have a really good night. In the Snowflake, saw him win multiple ARCA races for Joe Gibbs this year. Silas Ripley, another late model guy that's typically up front. Also, Buddy Shepard fit in that same bill. Jade Averdezian, saw her make multiple ARCA starts this year. Believe with that Willie Mullins crew. Can't forget the driver we were just talking to, Tristen McKee. Of course, can't forget the redneck Jesus, Bubba Pollard. If you are a late model fan, you know who I'm talking about. Cole Butcher, fresh off the 2025 ASA All-Star Tour Championship. Cole has been really strong recently. Should be a contender in both of these ones. He's in the Snowflake 125 Saturday night, trying to get that checkered flag. Canadian and part-time Xfinity driver in the past, Alex Labbe will be in the 42. Connor Jones, was just talking about him. He's going to be racing for Nice Motorsports again, part-time in the trucks. DJ Takare always seems to be quick in the late models. Jet Noland, saw Jet race in the Super Truck Series in St. Petersburg years ago. Excited to see him back on track. Another one of my favorite late model drivers, Steven Nasse. Luke Baldwin will be in the 51. Was just talking to his brother Jack at Wall Speedway. Last year's Snowball Derby champ, Kaden Honeycutt, will be racing in the 54 in this one. Matt Craig, another of the drivers I was lucky enough to talk to at the Clyde Hart Memorial at the beginning of the year. A great racing personality and fast in the late models. Keelan Harvick was talking about his paint scheme for the 62. Look out for him. He qualified second and finished fifth in the South Carolina 400. Carson Brown, another top up-and-coming talent. We know he's going to have a development deal with RCR. Boston Oliver. Boston Oliver made his Truck Series debut this year at IRP, and we were lucky enough, Splash the Gas was on the truck for his debut. Good luck, Boston. Corey Roper will be in the 4. He was a fan favorite in the Truck Series for a number of years. Last but not least, another familiar face on the late model side of things, Nicholas Nagel. Now, the one we've all been waiting for, drivers to look out for, the Snowball Derby. NASCAR flair in this one as well. We started off Cup Series driver Eric Jones. The Legacy Motorsports driver and past Snowball Derby champ himself looks to add another Tom Dawson trophy to his trophy cabinet. Past Truck Series champ Johnny Sauter will give it his best. Both guys we interviewed, Tristan McKee, Derek Thorn, each of those guys should be up front also. Shout out to friend of the podcast, Chase Pintano, the Canadian, fresh off his rookie season in the ASA All-Star Tour, will be looking for a top finish in the Derby on Sunday. Several other drivers that we were just talking about that are doing double duty to look out for both. Max Reeves, last year's champ Kaden Honeycutt. Can he go back to back? Bubba Pollard, he's a top contender for sure. Cole Butcher, Matt Craig, Jake Finch, Steven Nasse, and Carson Brown will be competing in both races. Can any of those drivers win both? Another young up-and-coming driver that has gotten a win at the start of the ASA All-Star Tour, Gavin Boschel in the 24. Noah Gragson, another full-time Cup Series driver for Front Row Motorsports. He'll be in the 30. Jake Garcia, full-time truck driver. He always seems to show out at these short tracks and the late models. Of course, cannot forget about Kyle Busch and Ryan Preece. Kyle Busch, we know, is a 2-time Cup Series champ. He is also a 2-time Snowball Derby champ. This is the first time Kyle will be in the field since 2020. What can he do in the 51? Was talking about Preece's paint scheme In episode 1 of this week, we know how good Ryan is in the modifieds. What can the Connecticut native do in the super late model? Last but not least, another NASCAR flair, owner Tricon Garage, father to Todd Gilliland, is David Gilliland. Excited to see David back behind the wheel. Now for Fast Davies bets. Yes, there are betting odds for the Snowball Derby. I was surprised myself. If you're really into betting and you want to place a bet on the Snowball Derby, I'm not going to advertise the name of the online casino. I'm not familiar with it, nor have I ever heard of it, but I was on its website. It looks very legit. Nonetheless, some of the top odds: Kyle Busch, 250 to win, Ty Majeski, 275, so on and so forth. Cole Butcher, plus 800. Steven Nasse, same thing. Some of the bets that I really like: Kaden Honeycutt, plus 600. Can he go back to back? Not a bad one. One of the ones I actually just mentioned, Cole Butcher, plus 800. Yes, of course, Ty Majeski, Kyle Busch, arguable favorites. I give a little bit edge to Ty just because how much seat time recently he's had in the super late models. Nothing against Kyle, 300 laps. You can obviously figure it out for sure. But Cole Butcher, ASA Tour champ this year, so dominant and strong in that late model. If Cole can really find his groove late on Sunday, I think that's a good bet. Plus 800, Cole Butcher, I think that's good bang for your buck there. Now for trivia answer time. This episode's question was, who was the first driver to win back-to-back Snowball Derbies? Answer is Rich Bickle Jr. Yes, this is the same driver we were just talking about in Snowball Derby history time. Bickle won back-to-back snowballs, first in 1990, then in 1991. With the hoods missing, he would go back-to-back once again in 98 and 99. Rich Bickle Jr. has won the Snowball Derby 5 times. What a feat. Now, our predictions for the Snowflake 125 and, of course, the Snowball Derby. So many things can change throughout a long weekend of pro and late model racing. Just went over who I think can be contending and up front. Snowflake 125, give me Max Reeves in the 18 Pro Late model to get the win. Now, predictions for the Snowball Derby. I have truthfully been flip-flopping between Ty Majeski and Kaden Honeycutt. Honeycutt, saw how good he was last year, and he's just run so many different types of late model racing. He always seems to be winning those. Won Ward Burton's late model race a couple weeks ago. Guy is just quick on the short track. And we cannot forget someone who I have called Mr. Short Track, Ty Majeski. Ty, we know how good he can be on these short track, especially in the super late models. Such a resume of wins Ty already has underneath his belt. Talking in episode 1 this week of just how many late model races that Ty has been running recently, even in the NASCAR offseason. Unfortunately for Ty, the recent ones had a little bit of bad luck, and fortunately, he hasn't won one of them. I think his luck will change. Truthfully, I think he's gotten some of the bad luck out of his system. And that we did see that kind of throughout the year. Ty was looking so strong and dominant at the Clyde Hart. The start of the ASA Tour season, Speed Weeks in Daytona, he was in that one. I thought he was going to walk away with it. He gets caught up with contact from Colby Howard, unfortunately. I think Ty can outlast long 300 laps. Give me Ty Majeski to win the 2025 Snowball Derby. As always, we're sponsored by Magical Travel with Dave, aka Disney Dave Weichert, my father. He will be able to help you with all your Disney and Universal vacation needs. He can be reached at DisneyDaveW@Verizon.net. Please make sure you follow all the Splash of Gas social medias for midweek and on-track updates. Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube are all Splash of Gas with Dave Weichert. Hope everyone gets to watch the Snowball Derby action throughout the weekend. Till next time, everybody, Splash of Gas out.